I have to admit that remote work isn't for all people. There are people who work better, in person. So they need people with them. If that's the profile, then they're not a good fit for our company. And what works with remote work is really finding people who has autonomy. They can work on their own. They basically thrive on just deadlines and leave me alone. I'll do your stuff and I'll send it to you at this time.
The global games industry is one of the largest creative industries in the world. But behind the blockbuster titles and billion-dollar revenues is a much harsher reality for many development studios. My guest today is Ria Lu, CEO of the Levert Group, a game development company working with international partners across several markets. But Ria's journey didn't start with Levert. She previously ran another studio for 7 years before it ultimately closed due to cash flow challenges, a turning point that fundamentally shaped how she built her next company. I met Ria through the APEC Women's Business Activator program, where I had the opportunity to work with founders from across the region who are building businesses internationally. Ria, great to have you on the show. I think where I want to start is just to think about the industry as a whole. Gaming is one of the most exciting creative industries in the world in the 21st century. At least that's how I see it. But from what I know, it's also very difficult for studios to survive. From your perspective as an insider, what makes running a game development company such a big challenge?
Well, if you think about games versus, let's say, an app. Apps are utilities. They have a use,
Yeah.
So you can more or less project how it'll do based on the needs that you see in the world, right? Games are not like that. It's entertainment. It's luxury if you think about it. So you're not quite sure. And the thing about games is that if you wanna sort of ensure or increase your chances of it being palatable to the market, is that you try to follow formulas.
Mm.
Problem is, the more you follow those formulas, you also tend to lose fans because it gets boring. It's like it's the same thing again. It's like Star Wars number, I don't know, 30.
Yeah.
It gets boring. So it's a world of stories. So you really need to play around with it, experiment with. The problem with experimentation is that half of the time they don't work.
Yeah. I see what you mean. And you think, is that one of the things that makes it hard? You just half the time you're just playing and many of those tests just don't hold up in the market.
Yes, that is. But we that's a big part of the reason. Yeah, that's true. Although the companies now, we've learned over the years to actually release a small version of the game, test it out
Yeah.
before proceeding with the rest of production, so that we can kill it if we see that the market doesn't like this. We can kill it, but that is one of the reasons why it's difficult for in the game industry. On the other side of gaming is outsource. And a lot of the companies in the Philippines are game outsource companies. Basically, we make games for other people. And the challenge on that part, because that has challenges too. Again, it actually goes back to the same problem, because if the market it doesn't like the game, or thinks that, I've had it with this franchise, then there's no work that's going to come to us.
Yeah.
And because of that, even the outsource industry is a little bit more volatile compared to, let's say, voice support or software. So
Now, maybe I'm just sort of thinking of stereotypes, but from what I know of the gaming industry, it's very male dominated. And, you're a nice girl from the Philippines, and it seems to be that most nice girls from the Philippines are not usually expected to go into gaming. So how on earth did a nice girl from the Philippines get pulled into the gaming world? How did that happen?
I like playing. When I was growing up, high school, even younger, I like that space. That's the comics and the animation and the gaming and those kinds of things. And so I really wanted to get into one of the creative industries. And at that time, I thought, you know what, gaming it is. So, and that's why I went into it. I didn't fall into the industry. I actually went after it, because during the time also, there was no game industry in the Philippines. It didn't exist back then. So yeah, that's we basically, when I started in the game industry, there were Probably only about 10 companies in
Mhm.
the Philippines. These are small studios doing, some of them were doing their own thing. Some of them were basically doing outsource for companies abroad. But yeah, my company was like one of those 10 at that time. And we were really just like figuring things out. But yeah, how I went into it, it's just something that I liked, and so I went after it.
Do you remember the first game you built?
Yes. Actually, it was an advert game. So when we say advert games, these are games that we make for brands. So that was our first client. The first game that I did was a game for Oreo.
Oh.
So yeah, so they had this whole twist, lick, and dunk idea, right? So we had to make a game. It was like a Rube Goldberg machine. Twist, lick,
Yeah.
and dunk idea. So yeah, that was my first game.
Well, that's crazy. I always think of that book. You must have read the book Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow.
No, I
Have
haven't
you
read.
not? Okay, you have to check out that book. It's about this girl and this guy who become best friends and start this game company. And it's sort of an epic saga novel, which it gets quite dark in places, but highly recommend that one. But that's one of the things that's made me so interested in gaming, actually reading that
I will
novel.
check it out.
Um, but before you ran Lever, before you set Lever it up, you ran another game company, which I think was the first one, and you ran it for a number of years. What happened with that business?
All right. So that was when I was starting out. So this was so after college, I went to Japan to study games because there was no game courses in the Philippines. So I studied computer science in the Philippines, went to Japan, studied game art, came back, set up my studio, which was called Komikasi at that time. And my idea was, hey, you know what? We'll create games for the local market.
Mm,
And our clients will be primarily the local game companies. Maybe they'd like us to make a game for them. Most likely, a lot of them are going to be brands. So that was my concept. And when I set up Komikasi, my first company, and my friends were all like, "Are you targeting the local market?" I said, "Yeah. Why?" No, you shouldn't, because the margins are too small. They don't understand the industry. They basically treat you like a poster,
mm.
So, in terms of like costs, they expect you to really drop your price, and they pay so late. So that's what they told me, and I was like, nah, I could, let me have at it.
I've got this.
And so I did, and I ran Komikaze for about 7 years. And we did a lot of games. Some were very interesting. We did, like I said, the Oreo game. We did that. Jollibee, if you've heard of that fast
Yeah,
food chain.
totally. Yeah.
We've done games for them. Nestle was one of our biggest clients. So it had its own success, Komikaze, um, but at a certain point, they were correct. Cash flow was the problem, because we were dealing with advertising agencies,
Mm,
not really directly with the companies, because usually games were used as part of a bigger campaign. So we didn't work directly with the company. We would work with an advertising agency, and we would be part of brand's campaign. The problem with that is that brands don't the agencies don't pay us until the brands pay them, and sometimes even after they've paid them, maybe they have their cash flow things as well. We don't get paid immediately. So, and we're a small company, we're less than 20 people. So it gets hard, when they pay late. So basically that was it. It was basically a cash flow issue that forced us to close after 7 years.
that must have been hard. I mean, how do you remember the day where you had to decide, okay, it's not gonna, this is not
Yeah.
gonna, what, tell me about the day.
Yeah, I mean, I was holding on for the longest time because you're kind of hoping, right? It's like,
Yeah.
no, we have collectibles, we can do it. No, next month we can find another project, So we were trying to like hold on for like the longest time, and I think I held on for like a year before I had to close it. And that year was like I was borrowing money. I was borrowing against my credit card just
Oh
to make
no.
payroll, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, after like a year, I was like, no, this isn't working. And we're just gaining more and more debts, but we're not getting enough projects to actually cover them. So, yeah, after that, 7 years, I had to close it. I had to talk to my people and say, We tried, it's not working, had to close it. And it was so like difficult because, well, number one, it was my first company.
Yeah.
It was difficult. But second, you have to understand this was at the time when, like I said, it was at the beginning of the game industry in the
Mm.
Philippines. If you were, let's say, an artist or a programmer who wanted to be in the game industry in the Philippines, you basically had to defy your parents.
Okay. Is that what you did?
Well, my parents are a bit more supportive, so I'm okay. But like I had people then in my first company where their parents, they're not happy with what they're doing because again, this is Asia, all right?
Yeah.
So like one of my project manager, his dad would like introduce him and his siblings this way. It's like, oh yeah, this is my eldest son, he's a lawyer. This is my daughter, she's a doctor. And this, well, I don't know. Then my youngest son, he draws stuff. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like that. So it's hard on these
Yeah.
kids, but they want to be in it. They
Yeah.
wanted to be in games. And so they would defy their parents just to be in this industry. So in essence, their hopes and dreams are like on you, and you dash these dreams, you know. So it was so hard. It was heartbreaking, and it was like I felt like I had failed them in that way. It's not even just the they won't have a job anymore. It's not simply a job. It was like your hopes and dreams were pinned on me, and I failed you. So yeah, that was hard.
This episode is brought to you by OFX. One of the things we see all the time with companies expanding internationally is that the strategy might be sound, the market choice might be right, but the financial plumbing is just not keeping up. Managing global finances can quickly turn into juggling currencies, unpredictable cash flow, and far too much admin. OFX helps take that friction out. They're trusted by more than 37,000 businesses worldwide, and they make it easier to pay international suppliers and teams in local currencies while saving on FX fees and simplifying the admin through one platform. If your business is operating across borders, OFX gives you clearer visibility and more control over your cash flow. You can find out more at ofx.com, and we'll put a link in the description. Just take me on the journey. What did you do the day you shut the door? This is, in the past, but did you think on that day, hey, I'm going to do all this again? Or did you like go and eat a lot of ice cream, or did you cry, or?
No, I sulked and I hid away for like an entire year. I just like I allowed myself to be miserable. Good thing is my parents were kind of like okay with it. It's like because I ran that company in Manila, but my hometown is actually south of the Philippines in Davao. And my mom was like, okay, I know it feels bad. Why don't you go back to Davao in our hometown? Things are quieter. You can think a little bit more. So actually, I was lucky because my parents allowed me that space, but I sulked for the entire year. For the year after that, I was like, oh, no, I don't know what to do. Nobody's gonna like. So some people were saying like, why don't you just work for somebody for a while? And I was like, nobody's gonna hire me. The first thing I did after college was set up this company, and it failed. Why are you gonna hire me? So all of these things. So that was me like for an entire year. And then at the end of the year, you basically really just get tired of yourself. It's like, "Ugh, I'm so tired of feeling like this. Let's do something about it." Yeah. So after that, I worked for somebody. So and that I remember it was like around Christmas time, and I was like, "Ugh, I'm tired. Let's. How do I get out of this? I had debts, right? And I needed an income. So I said, yeah, okay, who's gonna hire me? You know what? I told myself, if I took like 100 cold calls to get my first client, which was Oreo, then maybe if I send out 100 resumes, somebody's bound to hire me. So basically, that's what I did. So I ended up working in operations for a Japanese company simply because at that time they were looking for an operations person who could speak Japanese. But I studied games in Japan, so I spoke a little bit of Japanese. I wasn't that great at it, but I was like, you know what? Just go for it. And so I stayed with the company for like 3 years, I think. So yeah.
What made you decide to start again?
The pandemic, actually. So I worked for that company. It was a Japanese company. It was also an interesting experience because now for me, I was working for a company that was not a Filipino company. So it's very insightful in terms of like international business. Okay, so this is how the Japanese work. Okay, so this is so it was interesting. After that, I worked for a US software company. Basically, they hired me to set up the Philippine branch. And then the pandemic happened. And then during the pandemic, I was also sulking again because I was so tired of being cooped up at home because it was the pandemic, right? That when the borders finally opened, I flew to Singapore. Me and like two friends, we agreed to meet in Singapore. So I have a friend who's from Sydney, then another friend also from Manila. So three of us just like flew into Singapore just to like, can we just like decompress and like just get out of this hole, just so that I'm not in like my condo in Manila, And so we did. We met up, and then my Sydney friend, who was like, hey, didn't you say that you wanted to like get back into business and set up your own thing again and everything? And the pandemic also makes you like think differently. And that time I was like sulking again. I was like, yeah, but I don't even know what to set up. If I get back into the game industry, it might be the same thing again. And then he's like, so what's really stopping you from like setting up a company? You said you wanted to set it up in Singapore this time because it's easier. I mean, the business like way of doing business there is a little easier. The taxes are better and things like those. So she said, "What's stopping you from setting up in Singapore?" And I was like, "Nothing." And he's like, "They just set it up as what?" And he's like, "Just set it up as like a tech company, and then just figure out what you want to do from there." It's like, okay. So I did. I set it up in Singapore. And then but this time around, I said, okay, if I'm going to set up a studio again, I need to make sure that I have enough runway. So in this case, I said, I want like a year's worth of runway. I don't want like a few months. Because if you go to business school here in the Philippines, oftentimes they would tell you that you need to have a runway of about 3 months.
Yeah.
I was like, nope. Like the longest time I had to wait for a check from one of my clients was 9 months. It's going to be 1 year. So
That's pretty smart, actually.
so I did that because a lot of business people here would tell you that if you have money for like 12 months, that's your money basically sleeping. They're not doing anything, It could have been put to better use, But for me, it was like, I don't care. I need to feel secure. I need to feel that I'm okay so that I make good decisions. So if that's the cost, then that's the cost. So yeah.
I mean, it's unconventional, but I think it's worth it because, if you're in a volatile industry or in one where people pay slowly, I mean, that resonates with some of the experiences I've had. If you don't have a cushion of cash, then you're losing every second night's sleep wondering if you're going to get paid and what you'll do, in 6 weeks' time if you don't, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
With Leverett, you decided from the outset that you'd focus on international clients. Why was it so important?
So this time I decided to accept my friend's advice, because that was the advice they gave me back in my Komikasi days, the first company. Then this time I said, you know what? I will try your method. I will try it. And so that's what I did. So yeah, from the start, we focused on finding clients abroad. So we focused on like going to events outside of the country.
Mm,
And yeah, that's basically how we did it, how we approached it. Although most of our clients didn't come out of like directly being at the conference, it was like more of like us being at the conference, meeting some friends, probably even in Manila, and those friends recommended like clients to us. So, but yeah, Leverett basically focused on international clients, and it's better. It's definitely a lot better. You have higher margins, and they pay fairly faster. Within like 2 weeks normally,
yeah.
clients pay their invoices. So yeah, it's definitely a better experience than the first one.
Am I right in thinking that your first major client with Leveret was an Australian Web3 company that was working on a metaverse project? Is that have I got that right?
They're certainly one of the first. I'm trying to remember if they were the first, but yes, definitely they were one of the first.
What did it mean for the company when you got that kind of top tier project?
At that time, the company wasn't actually very large yet. So so it was so it was interesting, and it felt like okay. On the one hand, it felt like a big win because it was a large project, but also on the other hand, it was a difficult project as well because actually for that particular project, the Australian project, we didn't come in from scratch. We were basically brought in to fix a mess up. Um, and we realized, it's like, okay, you know what? Let's just accept that this is our role every now and then because we've had projects like that in the past wherein we really just come in to fix things. But okay. But basically that was the situation. They had hired a different company, but apparently the ones they hired weren't from the game industry. The ones who owned the project weren't from the game industry. This was basically Web3, so they were more Web3 people than game people. And then, sometimes it's understandable. You don't know anybody in the game industry. You hire somebody else in a different industry thinking that, they could do it. And the game wasn't working, it didn't run well. So we had to come in, look at it, ask questions, fix it, basically. So yeah, it was an interesting experience. And I think it was, it was financially very good for the company.
And was that sort of a springboard then to more work with big brands because you'd already got that credibility with a top tier company?
Yes, yes, yes. And also I think it helped also the experiences that I had prior to Leveret. Like before working for Leveret, I also ran a company called Laguna Games, which was a US Web3 company. So when we started working with that Australian group, they already knew that we worked with, like I personally worked with Laguna Games and Web3. So they were a little bit more um, comfortable working with me because I have been in that industry.
Yeah. So tell me about Leveret today. What does it look like? You've got offices in a few places, team in a few places. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we have offices both in Singapore and Manila, and team members like all over because we're a fully remote company. So we have a team member in Australia. We're working with groups around the country. Right now, we have a project. We're probably going to be working with a Japanese company as a supplier to us. So I really like that setup because uh, it takes off the limit that you just need to hire where you are.
Yeah.
So if there are no correct talent, because like for example for art, there's a lot of great artists in the Philippines, but for example if you need a certain look and it's not here, you can now work with anybody in the world.
Yeah.
So our setup of being remote is great for us. Also yeah, so the game industry at the moment is it has a lot of changes, is undergoing a lot of changes. This is because of people think it's AI, but actually AI hasn't quite caught up to the game industry yet. But the problem is actually that the playing behavior of people has changed after the pandemic. People are busier these days. There's a lot more distractions. There's a lot more things to do on your screen other than games. So things are changing. People are moving into mobile a lot. The older gamers who want like more interesting games have come back to PC. So things are moving.
Mm.
So for Leverett this time, aside from our outsourcing work, so we're still continuing to do that. We've also really focused on creating our own games as well. So we have a game that's coming out. We have a game that's on demo now because of course we have to like practice a little bit. So if you are interested in word games, we have a game called Word Cross on Steam. It's free right now for demo if you're interested to
Can we
download
put
it.
a link in the show notes
Okay.
in case there are any gamers watching this show?
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's really it's crossword but competitive. So yeah. And then we have a game that's launching in May, which is a puzzle game with a narrative. And for that, we're very excited about that because the monetization is a little different. We're going back to our roots, wherein we're working with brands, but it's a little different from how we used to do things. So yeah, we're very excited about that one. It's called Sort of Sweet.
That sounds really cool. I want to just take you back to this thing around remote working for a second, because you have a fully remote company. I have a company that's half remote and half in person. So about at least half of our team is split up around the world, and then some of our team is in Sydney. But even within Sydney, we work in a variety of formats, so it's never static. What's your experience been about maintaining company culture and great communication, and having everybody work well together when you're all split up? Tell me, what's your secret sauce for doing that?
Well, I have to admit that, remote work isn't for all people. There are people who work better, in person. Like I've encountered people who just have a hard time being alone,
Mm.
like in a home office. They can't work that way. So they need people with them. Um, so we like if that's the profile, then they're not like a good fit for our company. And we've had to let go of people who didn't kind of jive. um we do our best to maintain relationships though, because it's a small industry. But yes, there have been instances wherein the work style just doesn't work. What works with remote work is really finding people who has autonomy. They can work on their own, and they basically thrive on just deadlines and like, leave me alone, I'll do your stuff and I'll send it to you at this time. It helps getting them fresh out of college because there's no prior experience.
Yeah.
So, it's easy for them to adapt to this type of work style. So, that's one. Another thing is, we encourage actually our people to not be tied to their desk. Like what we tell them is that, hey, if you need to go have lunch with your friends, go and then just come back. Just know when the deadline is and just make sure that you submit on the deadline so that people who are waiting, won't be kept waiting. Because the game industry, for a game, it's really, you are waiting for things. If
Yeah.
somebody in that pipeline like doesn't submit at a certain time, everything's delayed, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, just keep to the deadline. If you need to like work tonight and go out today, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just keep to the deadline. So my guys know that, and they're okay, and they like that. So you don't feel too like tied to work.
Yeah.
But what we do as much as we can, depending on the budget for the year. But normally, what we do is every year we have a team building activity wherein we basically bring everybody together in one place, usually like a beach resort, and spend maybe around 2 or 3 days being together, and
That
just having
sounds like
fun.
fun. So what is next for Leveret Games? I mean, where do you see the business in the next 5 years?
So for us, it's really more. We want to increase the side of the business wherein we're releasing our own games. But we're trying to like the game that I mentioned that's releasing in May, Sort of Sweet. That's going to be a live game, which means it's gonna run for like years.
Mhm.
So that would be like one of the big things that's happening for Leveret. We're also going to be doing a few experiments within the game industry. Like I said, there's a lot of changes in the industry right now, so experimentation really is necessary. So we are doing that, and of course, we're not gonna let go of the work for hire side of the business as well. But I'd like to like lessen that to maybe half of the company if possible. So yeah.
Love it. Looking back, what advice would you give founders who are building companies in creative industries like gaming?
Yeah, creative industry is like the game in the creative industry is really survival. That's how I see it, because like I said, the creative industry is not a it's not necessarily a necessity. They're not. You don't see the need immediately. So it really is important to have that backup, that runway. And I think for people who wanting to be in the creative space or wanting to have companies in the creative space or are in the creative space, I would advise that go look at your numbers really, and as much as possible, like make sure that you have like a long enough runway. Be prudent with your spending. Some of the game companies that some of the younger teams that I've encountered, usually what happens would be they would have a successful game, money would be there, there's a lot of money. They would spend it, like on uh, maybe a vacation or a new house or something. And I'm not saying don't enjoy your earnings. Go on, but just make sure that you have something, that you leave for the company so that you survive. Because again, the name of the game in creatives is survival.
That 12-month runway, very important.
Yeah, yeah.
Ria, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was really great to reconnect and chat. And I hope I get to see you when I'm either up through Singapore for business or when I'm in the Philippines seeing my team. I'll come by and we can grab lunch.
Sure. Let me know. Let me know if you're in the area.
I would love to do that. All right. I'll see you soon.